The rope burns into your wrists. Around you, the air is thick with smoke and the metallic tang of blood. You can hear your husband's name being shouted somewhere in the chaos, but the sound is swallowed by the roar of collapsing stone. A hand grips your shoulder, not to comfort but to claim. The soldier's face is methodical, almost bored as he yanks you toward the collection point where other women stand in silent rows. Your daughter reaches for you, screaming, but another set of hands pulls her away. You try to remember her face, to burn it into memory, because somehow you already know. This is the last time you will see her as the person you were. By nightfall, you will have a new name, a new purpose, and the empire that destroyed your world will call it civilization. The Siege of Numantia, 133 BCE. What Roman forces did to the wives of Iberian warriors there would become a template, refined over 4 centuries, executed across 3 continents, and documented with a bureaucratic precision that turns the stomach. Before we go deeper into this machinery of human destruction, drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. It genuinely moves me that a story this dark, this deliberately erased from history, can still find people who refuse to let it stay buried. The smoke had barely cleared when the sorting began. Roman centurions didn't rampage through the ruins of Numantia looking for spoils. They processed the survivors with the efficiency of tax collectors. Women were separated from men, children from mothers. The elderly were killed immediately, not out of cruelty but calculation. They had no market value. What followed wasn't chaos, it was administration, and that's what made it so much worse. The Roman military machine had spent 2 centuries perfecting a question that most empires never bothered to ask. How do you not just defeat your enemies, but prevent them from ever becoming enemies again? The answer they developed was demographic warfare, systematic, documented, and horrifyingly effective. When Roman legions conquered a territory, they didn't just topple governments or seize land. They surgically removed the wombs that would birth the next generation of resistance. A woman named Ritogenes, we know her name only because it appears in a Roman ledger discovered in Tarraco, was the wife of a Celtiberian chieftain who had held the northern walls of Numantia for 8 months. When Roman forces finally breached the defenses, her husband died with a sword in his hand. She was found 3 days later, hiding in a grain storage pit with 6 other women. The Roman record is chillingly specific. Female, approximately 25 years, good teeth, no visible scarring, suitable for domestic service or secondary market. Estimated value, 1,200 denarii. 1,200 denarii was more than a Roman soldier earned in 3 years. That single line of accounting reveals what Rome understood that other empires didn't. Defeated warriors' wives weren't just prisoners, they were liquid capital, walking assets, and Rome had built an entire infrastructure to extract maximum value from human misery. The system operated on 3 interconnected levels, each feeding into the next with mechanical precision. First was immediate profit. The capture and sale of women generated the funds that allowed legions to operate far from Rome's supply lines. But the second level was more insidious. Demographic disruption. By removing women of childbearing age, Rome ensured that defeated populations couldn't recover their numbers for generations. A tribe that fielded 10,000 warriors one year might barely manage 3,000 20 years later, not because of casualties but because there were no mothers to bear sons. The third level was the darkest, cultural erasure. Children born to captive women in Roman households grew up speaking Latin, worshipping Roman gods, knowing nothing of their mother's language or lineage. Rome wasn't just conquering territories, it was farming compliance, using the reproductive capacity of enemy women to breed populations that knew only servitude. We know the specifics because the Romans documented everything. Archaeological excavations at Ostia, Rome's port city, have uncovered an entire district dedicated to the processing of human cargo. Not the random holding pens you might imagine, but specialized facilities. Examination rooms where physicians checked women's health to establish prices. Bathing areas where appearances could be improved before sale. Even primitive cosmetic surgery stations where scars might be minimized or hidden. The infrastructure reveals a society that had industrialized human trafficking, with the same attention to efficiency they brought to aqueducts and roads. The year 70 CE brought this system to its most documented and devastating crescendo. When General Titus surrounded Jerusalem after a 4-year Jewish revolt, the city was swollen with Passover pilgrims, perhaps 600,000 people trapped within walls that couldn't feed a third of that number. The historian Josephus, who watched from the Roman camp, recorded what happened next with the precision of a man trying to make sense of the senseless. The outer walls fell in 15 days, but Titus didn't order an immediate assault. He waited. Let the starvation inside intensify, let the hope drain away. When Roman forces finally entered the city, they moved with the coordination of a harvest crew. Soldiers didn't search for hidden rebels. They herded survivors toward predetermined collection points, separating them by age, gender, and condition with the practiced efficiency of men who had done this dozens of times before. A woman we know only as the red-haired one, that's literally how she appears in Roman auction records, was the wife of a Jewish commander named Eleazar ben Simon. She came from a priestly family, could read Hebrew and Greek, had given birth to 3 children, 2 of whom were already dead by the time Roman hands dragged her from the underground shelter where her husband's body was still cooling. The Roman physician who examined her noted that despite malnutrition, she had good bone structure, clear eyes, suitable for educational slavery or concubinage. She was purchased by a Roman senator for 2,400 denarii, double the standard rate. Her infant daughter was sold separately for 300. The Romans kept them both in the same city for 3 years, close enough that the mother might have passed her child on the street without recognizing her. That wasn't cruelty. It was policy. Roman military doctrine explicitly stated that family bonds among captives should be severed to prevent coordinated resistance. Mothers were separated from children, sisters from sisters. Women from the same village were sold to buyers in different provinces. Psychological isolation was built into the system at every level, ensuring that even when surrounded by other captives, each woman remained fundamentally alone. The scale is staggering. After Jerusalem's fall, Josephus records that 97,000 people were taken captive. Roman documentation suggests approximately 40,000 were women and girls. Within 6 months, they had been distributed across the empire, some to the slave markets of Alexandria, others to Rome itself, still more to provincial cities throughout Greece, Gaul, and Hispania. The Jewish population of Judea, which had numbered perhaps 2.5 million before the revolt, would never recover those numbers. Rome hadn't just defeated a rebellion, it had performed demographic surgery, removing the reproductive capacity that might fuel future resistance. But to understand how thoroughly this system permeated Roman society, we need to look beyond the battlefield to the legal frameworks that made it possible. Roman law classified captured women as praeda bellica, spoils of war obtained through the soldier's valor. This wasn't just a descriptor. It was a legal category that stripped captives of any rights or protections. They weren't people who had been enslaved. They were objects that had been acquired. The distinction mattered because it determined what could be done to them. Under Roman law, praeda bellica remained collective property of the military unit until formally auctioned into private slavery. During this transitional period, which might last weeks or months, captive women existed in a legal void where they had no protections whatsoever. Roman military courts occasionally prosecuted soldiers for damaging high-value captives, but the crime wasn't rape or assault, it was destruction of military property. The victim had no legal standing. Only the Roman state, as the theoretical owner of the damaged asset, could bring charges. The case of Chiomara illuminates this system's internal logic. In 189 BCE, this Galatian noblewoman was captured during Rome's campaign against the Galatians in Asia Minor. The centurion assigned to guard her raped her, not randomly, but in violation of standing orders that high-value captives remain unblemished to preserve auction prices. Chiomara, through extraordinary courage and cunning, managed to order her followers to kill and behead her assailant when he tried to collect ransom. Roman historians recorded this story not as an atrocity and its just revenge, but as an amusing anecdote about Barbie,